Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays, a long-anticipated X-Men 97 review. Kelsey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really well, Dill. The way you said, like, hello, everyone, it was very serious. I was like, oh, we're
Oh,
getting
it's
down to business this
we're getting
episode.
down to business because I'll just say right now, and we're gonna talk about news. We're gonna talk about the best thing we watched this week, all that yada yada yada. But
Yeah.
I'm just gonna preface this episode by saying that I don't think I've enjoyed a project of Marvel's as much as I did this since the original Raimi trilogy when I was growing up. The original Spider-Man
Wow.
Raimi trilogy. So, if you think about it, we've had this podcast for what, 3, 4 years? We have covered everything in phase 4 and 5 so far in the MCU. We've covered the Venoms, we've covered, we've gone back and covered the old X-Men movies, we've covered a lot of stuff. We're going back even older to like the first Avenger files, we call it. And while we're covering all this, I did not know that there would be something that would surpass it all. We've covered the Spider-Verse movies. Again,
Hmm.
movies that I love. But I think the reason I'm so serious is because this is I think the best Marvel project since the Raimis. Nothing's ever gonna top those first two Spider-Man movies for me because that's like my
Okay.
childhood, that's my nostalgia, that's like my those are two of my favorite movies of all time. But like if we're looking at the grand scheme of Marvel, I think this might be it for me. And I know like the MCU, we've got our favorites in there, but like I don't know. I don't know. And it's so recency bias that like I'm gonna wait a little while to like actually
Sure.
reclaim that opinion. But I don't know, Kels. I'm really, really excited today.
It was pretty darn good, Dill. It
Yeah.
was pretty darn good. Just
Yeah.
as good as everyone said it was going to be. So
Yeah,
I'm also very
and
excited
it's
to
great
talk
because we
about
get
it.
to watch. I watched it all in like a few days. Like I watched the first 5
Hmm.
episodes, needed a minute to cry and breathe and hate myself,
Yup.
and then I watched the next 5 episodes like the next day. So like it was really nice to watch it all together because I mean. We talk about the binge versus stream versus cable model of do we like the week by week episodes to kind of let ourselves fester on these things and think about these things, or do we like watching them all in one sitting? And I think there's a benefit and a pro to both. But because there were 10 episodes and they were only a half hour, that's what 5 hours of my day. Like that was a really nice thing to just like binge as one big thing. Especially knowing we're gonna get even more. And it is 10 episodes, but it's really 11, which is like a kind of fun like twofer. We get a twofer at one point, which is kind of
Hmm.
nice. But like I really I thought binging this one for me was really exciting because it didn't feel the same as a lot of the other MCUs where it's like you need the week to process and break down the Easter eggs. It's like, no, I liked taking it all in at once and now kind
Hmm.
of going back and now I can kind of take one episode at a time in my brain. But yeah, I mean, we have to talk about it, but I do want to get our business out of the way first. We
Yeah.
did get a Venom trailer quite literally this morning. Have you watched it yet, or?
I did watch it, Dill.
Okay, Kelsey, what are your thoughts on this Venom trailer? I know everyone wants to hear us talk about X-Men, but we gotta get that business out of the way.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Venom Last Dance trailer? The same
Yeah.
subtitle that Magic Mike used just a year ago. The Last Dance. Do you think it
Huh, I
is the
wonder if there's
Last
any
Dance?
correlation.
Do you think this is? Well, I mean, there definitely is. This movie hella horny. I mean, these
You know,
movies are hella horny. Venom movies.
the Venom, yeah, obviously. Lots of sexual tension in
Hmm.
these movies for sure. We're fans of the Venom movies here at Marvelous Movie Mondays, so of course this is a project I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
I honestly forgot that there was even going to be a third installment, so when
I knew it
you
was
sent
coming. I
me this
forgot it was coming
trailer,
this year. Like I was like,
yeah.
oh yeah, I know we're getting like it's greenlit, it's slated. But then when they're
Mhm.
like coming out later this year, I'm like, Happy Halloween! Like that's so exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know if you noticed this still, probably, but we got two Ted Lasso cast members in this trailer.
I actually did not even pick up on that. No.
So we have Danny, what's his name
Yes,
in the show?
I don't remember, but
Danny Rojas.
he's in the post credit scene of No Way Home because he's the bartender, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he was in the trailer as well. There is a
Mm,
short snippet of like I
right.
think where they're gonna pick up where they left off in the
No
bar.
Way Home.
And then of course the big addition that we have to this movie is Juno Temple, which is really
Right,
exciting.
right. Yes, that
Um
one I knew. I
yes.
forgot about Danny Rojas, but yeah, very exciting Ted Lasso
That
crossover.
yeah. It just interesting. I was like, it literally just dawned on me in this moment. I was like, "Oh wow, 2 members of the Ted Lasso
Right.
cast are."
Well, and who knows? I mean, if they make a Ted Lasso season 4, we might see Venom in it, you know? I think he'd be a great addition. "Pass me the ball, you fiend!" No, I don't know. I love first off, I've always loved, like, the interplay with the 2 of them, and just, like, the
Yes.
lines of the trailer where it's like, "You always take me to nice places." Like, just, like, things like that where I'm like, "This is, like,
Yeah, yeah,
the shit
yeah.
I love from it," and I think they kind of realize that because the first one is a little totally off. But then the second one, I feel like they really hit their groove of, oh, this is not, we're not going to take ourselves as seriously as we have been. We're going to go for
Mhm.
more of like this, like kind of odd couple thing. That's going to be our
Yeah.
bread and butter. And I think they're really leaning into it being like this last dance till death do they part. Like this is a committed relationship at this point,
Yeah.
which is funny. I wish they had just, made it, uh, "Till Death Do They Part" as the subtitle instead of "The Last Dance." I think it's a cooler title. But that seems to be the slogan, at least in the poster and everything. So, yeah, so there's the implication that this is the literal end of Venom. How do you feel about that? Do you think that the movie advertising it is a good thing, bad thing?
I think that I mean, obviously, it's really hard to perceive the concept of death in Marvel movies because it's so finicky.
Right.
So it's like, is one of them really going to die at the end of this? Could this be the end of their symbiotic relationship?
Mm.
Maybe it's the end of the relationship with the two of them as we know it, and then they can both just like move on
Well,
as
it's like
two
a Toy
separate
Story 4.
entities.
It's like a Toy Story 4 thing.
Yeah, something like
Mhm.
that. That's my prediction at least,
Mm.
because if we had to say goodbye to one of them, it just like it wouldn't feel like a very fulfilling
Yeah.
ending.
My prediction is,
Um,
like, more Guardians of the Galaxy where, like, Venom will save Eddie, and then, like, Eddie's sad, and he sees a little tiny little Venom thing, and it's a baby Venom. Like,
oh,
that's what,
okay.
like, I'm going the Groot route. So we got 2 different
Okay.
ideas. We've got one where
Gotcha.
it's like they can exist separately, which is Kelsey's
Yeah.
idea, and then mine, which is Venom will die, but baby Venom will be born. Like, I think that's
Right.
both are very plausible, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And we might be totally off. They might just both die and that be it. But, because it
What
is the Sony
I'm
verse, but
Yeah, what I'm interested in, Dill, is that the last time we saw Venom was the post-credit scene of No Way Home? Question
mhm.
mark?
Yeah.
Was like when he like, you know,
Is at the bar.
was brought into Peter Park Tom Holland's universe, and then Venom really wanted to eat him, but then he's like transported back to the bar in Mexico.
Yeah, I
I
think it's
Am I
just a bit.
remembering this right?
No, you're right. I think
Okay.
it's just a bit. Like, I really
It
think it
was
was a
just
bit for that
weird.
movie, and they're not because they wanted it to be a 6-6, even though it was a 5.
Oh, okay.
But I do think it's one of those things where I think he's just gonna come back, and I don't think they're gonna even address that, to be honest with you.
Okay. Because
I don't
I'm
know, though,
like,
maybe.
sitting here remembering, and I'm like, oh yeah, like they totally teased like a Venom kind of Spider-Man crossover thing, and that
Mm.
just like never happened.
I mean,
But
maybe that's the thing they're hiding, and that's the thing is like Marvel's either really good or really bad at hiding shit. Like Deadpool
yeah.
3, I feel like I don't really know much about it. Like except for like the
Mhm.
inciting incident, but I'm glad they're not like spoiling any big cameos or anything. But then you have like, No Way Home, for example, that spoiled all their big cameos. Not all, but most of their big cameos. Or
Mhm.
big moments, big reveals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, as you said, we're both big fans of the Venom franchise, so I'm hype. I'm hype. Any other Marvel news from you, Kels, this week?
No, nothing I
No.
can think of.
Yeah.
Nothing
They,
jumping out at me. Oh, there was an assembled episode of X-Men 97, but I
mm,
just did not get around to watching
it's
it,
okay.
so I'll make
You
sure to
need a
talk about
breather.
that next
Yeah,
week.
an emotional breather before that. But also, I did see they did post what the designs for the Deadpool popcorn buckets are going to be, and they're quite funny. So go check that out on your own time, folks. It's quite a design. Very
Oh
very
god.
big agape holes in the mouths. So it's gonna
Good.
look like you're shoving your arm down Wolverine's throat, basically. Anyway, yep, you just opened it. Yep, that's the authentic reaction right there that we wanted here on Marvelous Movie Mondays. Kelsey, best thing you watched this week? Do you have one that is jumping out at
Okay.
you?
I remember we texted about it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it on Tuesday. So
Oh
I
yeah,
don't think
okay,
we've
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about it since, but
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
finally saw
yeah, yeah.
Challengers.
Yes, yes. Tell us,
And
tell us. What do you
it
think?
Oh my god, it was so good. I gave it 4.5 stars on
Mhm.
Letterboxd. The
That's
only
right.
reason why I docked it a star was because I didn't agree with all the musical choices that that movie made. Um, but that was literally the only thing that I kind of disliked about it. Like everything else was just like the acting, the cinematography, the like the time how they just like the writing of it all, just like how they told the story through like past, present, and like future almost kind of in a kind of way.
Mhm.
And oh, it was just so great. Oh, what a tasty little snack that movie was. I really, really enjoyed it.
I love it. I don't know if I brought this up on the last episode, but I did see Hitman. Did I bring up Hitman on the last episode?
Oh, yes, because we talked about how you saw it in a theater in New York, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know Netflix
Yeah, yeah,
released
yeah, yeah, yeah,
their
yeah. Yeah, so
movies."
I'm just gonna bring it up again because it's coming out on
Yeah.
streaming at the end of the week on June 7th. It is freaking awesome. So go check that out. I haven't watched a lot of movies
Oh,
because I'm in tech for another show I'm in. So like I have not had time to like look at a lot of movies that aren't episodes of X-Men. But I did
so
start the
what
ret
show are you in?
I'm music directing SpongeBob
Oh,
SquarePants with the teen
yeah, yeah,
program,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
are awesome. We actually had
Cool.
a great day yesterday, reminiscing of old shows. Because one of our co-stars from Les Mis is on the stage crew team, Max, Mr. Max, and so we were like, kind of
Incredible.
talking about they were talking shop about old shows we had done, and realizing that the program that we like kind of started was is now almost a decade old, and that these kids are 10 years younger than us, and it makes me feel ancient, but
Damn.
yeah, this is the 10-year anniversary of that program starting, which is crazy. And 9 years since we did Les Mis, Kels. So, whew, anyway, yeah. So
Okay, let's
I
move
haven't
on.
watched a lot, but I did start my retrospective, and I started it. I thought because we're beginning another retrospective, I watched Begin Again with Keira Knightley, Mark Ruffalo, and Adam Levine from Maroon Five.
Mm,
Good
of
movie.
course.
I thought it was good. I think it was a little twee. I never get to use that word, but this is the perfect case scenario for it. It's like very twee. It's very like it's so cute, like but
Yeah,
annoyingly
yeah,
so. But
yeah.
like it's twee. It's not gonna make my top 10. But yeah, I started the retrospective. So if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, everyone Dylan underscore Randazzo. I am doing a retrospective for June and July where I'm talking about movies from 10 years ago. Kelsey and I are going to be doing some commentaries this month for movies that came out 10 years ago, Marvel movies, and we might have some other stuff planned for it. So on other videos and such, picture this: we're doing 2014. Matt and I are going to be doing a 2014 movie this month. Roger Corman inspired because he passed away this year. So yeah, like we're gonna try the best to celebrate the films of 10 years ago and remind myself that I'm so old. Yeah, because I saw a lot of those movies in theaters and it does not feel long ago, but it was 10 years ago, which is crazy. You want to just rattle off some movies, Kelsey, that came out in 2014 to make you feel old?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Let's do it. So some movies that came out in 2014: Interstellar, Guardians of the Galaxy, Big Hero 6, the
Mm,
third Hunger Games movie came out in 2014. The original
mm,
Paddington came out in 2014.
mm.
X-Men: Days of Future Past, Divergent, The Fault in Our Stars, 22 Jump Street, The Interview. Remember when they like pulled that from theaters or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Annabelle, Into the Woods was that year.
Ah,
Yeah, crazy. Pitch Perfect 2, Love and Mercy, The Muppets, whatever it's called, Most Wanted. Yeah, movies that I feel like I just saw in theaters. That John Wick, the first John Wick. But isn't it crazy the Lego movie? Like all these movies that I'm like, they're 10 years old. Crazy. But that's what it is. That's how it
wait,
works.
Jill,
That's
did
how
I
time works.
tell you that I finally watched Paddington?
When?
I watched it, like, the other week, like, last week or something.
Ha! It wasn't the best thing you watched that week? Oh, no.
Oh,
Wait. Did you watch both?
no, I haven't. Well, because the second one isn't anywhere. Like the first one was
Okay.
somewhere on
Well, the first one's
streaming
good.
for
Okay,
free.
okay, okay. I was gonna say if you had seen Paddington 2 and not been like, "That's the best thing I watched this month, year,
Oh
life," I would have been like, So
no,
like,
but
the first one's good
if
though.
no, the first one was great. I really, really enjoyed it.
It's
It
cute.
was so cute. I really like the like set design of it all, where it kind of like
Paul
zooms.
King. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good stuff, and just like so sweet. I have such a soft spot for just like creatures that are like just so tender and loving as
Yeah.
Paddington is.
Yes. Oh my god. Wait till oh my god. Paddington 2 is gonna blow your socks off. Like that I can't I think I want to be there for that.
Okay.
We'll find a day because I am, oh my god, I ugh. Okay, we need to move on to X-Men. It's been 15 minutes,
Okay.
Kels. Let's talk. Um,
Yeah. Let's get to the
wow, wow,
nitty-gritty.
wow, 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 wow. I've been liking the animated series. We talked about it. We didn't like season 5 very much, but like we've been fans of the animated series. But just like what an improvement while also still staying true, which is the
Yeah.
biggest thing that I couldn't believe they did right. Because like there's very much a world where you could just revamp it, but it loses the identity of it. But, like, they totally made it work. Like, they made it feel like you were
Mhm.
picking up right where you left off, quite literally, right with Xavier's
Yeah.
death. The only thing that feels different is that the animation is so improved and the technology is so improved that you get more flashy, more elaborate action sequences, and you get some
Mhm.
anime influences, but I think that's a plus. And the other thing you get that's a little different is some voice actor changes, but even then, it's not that major, and there's kind of something to be said, like, something endearing about the fact that Wolverine's voice actor sounds a little older because he is a little older, and that you still have the same rogue voice actress. Some of the other, uh, Avengers, I almost said, mutants have been replaced, just
Mhm.
either due to the actors dying or the actors quite literally aging out of them, but for the most part, I think they really, like, stuck the landing. This is gonna be a
Mhm.
very positive episode on my end, but I'd like to hear your thoughts just on this
Yeah.
overall series.
Yeah, Dill, I honestly I walked away with it feeling two things. Obviously, I was like blown away by like the depths they were able to go with just like every character. It really felt like no
Yeah.
mutant left behind this
And the one
season.
who was most underutilized, and I think it's purposeful because we've seen so much of him in the media, is Wolverine. And even him, he had great
Mm.
action moments, but if you look at screen time for each one who has an arc, he really has no arc in this season. But I think that's
Mhm.
because we've seen so much Wolverine. We're about to see him in a month. Like, I think it was a very conscious choice to say, you know what, we
Yeah.
really want to spotlight all these other members and really every other member. Like Beast gets something. Even though he's not a focal point, Beast gets a lot of stuff about how he starts to like actually doubt Xavier. He's this optimist who begins to actually doubt his methods. You get a lot from Jubilee, who we thought was just like cannon fodder for 5 seasons, and she finally gets an
Mhm.
arc. She gets to start falling in love, which is something we don't really see
Mhm.
a lot from the X-Men except for Jean, Cyclops, and Wolverine. Cyclops and Jean have a crazy arc. Storm has a great arc.
Yeah.
Obviously Gambit, Magneto and X have a great arc. I mean, it's really Rogue. Everyone has a good arc. Jean
Yeah.
has a good arc. When have we
Yeah.
seen that?
Yeah. Oh, couldn't be happier with the way they utilize Jean. Oh my god. I think they like rewatched the past series and they were like, "Wow, we have to revamp this character
Right, because she
tenfold
gets
or
5
else."
episodes in the original series, Dark Phoenix, and that's it, and a lot of it is
Yeah.
her off and everyone else talking about her, and, like,
Mhm.
now it feels like she's not just part of a team, but, like, her and Cyclops are the leads of the show. It is their
Yeah.
story, essentially,
Yeah.
'cause, the main through line, the big plot, overarching plot is the stuff with Nathan, which I think is also an improvement because I think getting an overarching story really helped make it feel important, made the stakes feel greater that you're not getting a lot of these just, like, one-off episodes that aren't going to really matter. Like it feels like every episode mattered, and we saw something we don't usually see where the previous episodes always kind of segued into the next episodes and it didn't
Mhm.
have a
Mhm.
final stopping point, which was I
Yeah.
think kind of nice.
Yeah, that was one of my big takeaways was that it feels definitely more like an animated series made for adults rather than a children's like cartoon on a Saturday morning because the entire season had like a full through line. There was no episode that was just like it didn't feel episodic in the fact where
Mhm.
it's just like one episode had its own beginning, middle, and end, and then the next episode was a totally new
Yeah.
story, new villain, whatever the case was.
Hmm.
And I kind of miss that a little bit. Like I
Sure.
almost miss like the ending the episode on like a lesson learned and like a moral to the story kind of thing where it was like very much like catered to a more younger that's English, a younger audience.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, it definitely feels a lot more mature and a lot more just like made because I guess it makes sense because the kids who would have been watching it in the year 1996
Right.
are adults now. So if
Yeah.
they're going to cater to that audience, then like
Yeah.
yeah, make it
And
make
like
it an adult animated
yeah,
series.
it's like a show made for kids of the 80s because kids who were born in the 80s because then they were probably around 10 when X-Men came out or
Mhm.
10 to 12 or whatever. I don't know, but like late 80s and then like this takes place in 97, which I also want to say great attention to detail and making it still feel like it's from the 90s. It felt like it
Mhm.
was made modern day because of the technology and how crisp everything looked, but like the
Mhm.
clothes the characters were wearing, the atmosphere, the different musical cues, and they used some like actual needle drops, which was kind of cool because that's like the Disney budget of it all. But like
Yeah.
it really felt like it was from the 90s, and the only thing that distracted me from, "Oh, we're not in the 90s," is, like, seeing Spider-Man because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, he wouldn't be born yet," but I'm also like, "This is its own
Right.
universe, so it doesn't have to be the Spider-Man we know." It
Right.
could be whatever. It could be Toby's, who cares? I don't know, like, I think that was the one point where I was like, "Wait, but he didn't exist till later," but I was like, "No, it doesn't matter," like,
Right.
we're still in the 90s, and they even make that a point with the T'Chaka thing where they're like, "No, it's not T'Challa, it's T'Chaka because 'cause we're in the 90s." So it's like,
Yeah.
that was a little different, and, like, technically Cap would have still been frozen by now. Like, there's a lot of things that I'm like, in the MCU timeline, this doesn't line up, but like, I don't think it
Right.
was trying to be in that timeline. I think it's its own
Yeah, no.
timeline. So I was totally willing to forgive it. But
So should we jump in episode by
yeah,
episode?
let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so we start off episode 1 to Me, My X-Men, which is crazy because okay, I obviously watched all of these like at least twice, all of them, but like some of them I had to watch like a third time. Um and it was and just back to like general thoughts real quick. It was after episode 5 where I almost walked away and was like, is it too much? Is too much happening?
Mm,
Like, is it on the cusp of being bloated? Did you feel like that way at all, Dill? No,
no,
you just loved it.
and I no, I did. Well, because I think there's something to say about it being maybe a little like the action is definitely more extreme. They definitely go bigger in the action. But really,
Mhm.
like if you think about episode 5, and we'll get there in a sec, it's really only centered around 3 or 4 characters. It's centered around Jean's clone, Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit. The other X-Men aren't even there. So like it was kind of
Right.
nice. Like the everything happening around is very big, but it's still only confined to a few characters, it feels, for every storyline, to where it doesn't feel like kind of when we were talking about Dark Phoenix, where it's like, and then this person shows up, and then this person, and this person, and this person, where we're
Mm.
like, oh my god, chill. Like it was nice. I felt like the arcs themselves were still very contained. Like it was still very emotional and personal. Like I think there's something to be said about how like Gambit's final moment is so quiet. It's almost a whisper.
Mhm.
And that Rogue and Magneto have that scene, and it's just
Mm.
them, like in their like there's a bunch of people there, but it's like a moment centered around those two. I don't know. I felt like
Mhm.
it was kind of the opposite. It felt like there was almost more room to breathe, because I feel like you don't even get a lot of those character moments. Like for example, like Storm and Jean when they're just talking, and she's like talking about her fears of raising a baby. Like I feel like we wouldn't get a lot of that in the original series. I
Mhm.
think a lot of the other series was just like, let's just cut to the action. Whereas here, I felt like there
Yeah.
were more moments to just kind of chill and sit and talk and just be human. So I kind of had an opposite take of that, but I get what you mean in
Sure.
terms of like it was very dramatic. Like they were hitting what
Yeah.
seemed like the finale highs at like the midway point. It was like, where else do we go from here? And I think they had
Right.
to make a nice cool down to then hit us again at the end. But I do agree, a lot happened in sense of like it was very grand, but I still felt like the stakes were pretty contained still, to the characters. The moments were nice, but this first episode did feel the most though like the old episodes in terms of just like kind of
Mhm.
reacquainting us and all the action stuff.
Yeah. I think they definitely wanted to start us in the shallow end because they had a lot of,
Mhm.
bigger punches coming. They were definitely
Right.
pulling their punches with episode 1. So the big topics that I want to talk about in episode 1 is just the fact that we meet Sunspot, Roberto DaCosta,
Mhm.
uh, who we have apparently saw in the New Mutants movie with Anya Taylor-Joy and that cast, but like shit if I remember. Apparently he's in that movie. Um obviously not, animated, whatever. Um Jean is pregnant,
Oh yeah, we
which
did meet him apparently. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Good. Confirmed. I was a little nervous because I was like, "Oh my god, is the most interesting thing they're going to do with Jean is make her a mother." But that
And it is, but in a different way you expect.
but in a much better way. Like
Yeah. Like yeah.
it was how like in season 5 how the most interesting thing they made her do is cook Christmas dinner and I was like, "Okay, I'm not we're
Right.
just not. We're
Right.
not doing this."
Mhm.
And so I was like, "Oh my god, they're just going to make her like pregnant and like just like be a mom." But it gets way better, no worries. And yeah, so and So at some point during this episode, we hear Scott say the words to me, my X-Men, while they're in a battle, I think with like the Sentinels at some point. Also, it's not that I disliked Scott from the original series, but for some reason, like this Scott in this series is like so much cooler. I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm rocking with
Well,
Scott.
and I think that the thing is they gave him a lot of good character depth too. Yes,
Hmm.
he was mourning Jean with the Dark Phoenix thing. Like that was important for him, but like I feel
Yeah.
like we got so much Scott. Like I said, I think Scott is the main character of this series because like it really is. It's either Scott, Magneto, or Jean, really, or Scott or Magneto probably. But like Scott really is the main character of the series, where like he is supposed to essentially take up the mantle, and I think that's why the ending of this episode hits so much, and why the to me my X-Men thing hits so much because Magneto
Mm.
says it later, and it's like one of those things where it's like
Yes, exactly.
it's like what is the X-Men to him was something he thought was completely different, and like he feels almost cheated. And I love how like this whole season kind of challenges the ideas of Professor X and saying like, maybe he wasn't right. Maybe Magneto's method is right, more right in a way than his
Hmm.
methods, or at least maybe it should be thought out. Maybe there's a reason. And I just think what they do with Scott is so good because it really he's dealing with a lot of shit between what goes on with Nathan, but then also just like the kind of feeling gypped by Professor X that he didn't leave, the X-Men to him when he's like the leader. It'd be like if Tony Stark died and handed the keys to the Avengers Tower or whatever to freaking Thor, and then Cap was like, "Yo, what gives?"
Mm.
It's kind of like
Hmm.
that where it's like very clearly there's a second in command,
Mm.
but I really do think it led to some really interesting drama, and I think just how they were able to do his fighting is just so much better with this new technology, with just like all the like lasers from his eyes and stuff. I just feel like it looks so much cooler with the
Mhm.
improved technology because it does kind of like I mentioned earlier, like the action does kind of feel a lot like anime inspired in a way at some points, where
Mm.
like it's really grand and like I feel like that's stuff you just couldn't do with technology and animation back then. And because back
Mhm.
then, remember, because we had so many weird release date things, there was different animators for different episodes. Here, it feels like the same
Mhm.
team worked on everything,
Yeah,
which
for
I think
sure.
really helps. Yeah.
Yeah, and to sum up what you just said, Dill, I just think that in the past series, like, Scott was just so one-dimensional
He was very
and was, like
stoic, and that was it. Yeah.
yeah, and with this, like, we definitely got to see a lot more sides to him. Um, yeah. So I just like really, really appreciated his character much more.
Mhm.
This episode, and obviously episode one, introduces us to this idea of this like, back and forth between Jubilee and Roberto, which we
Which I
see
love.
later.
They're cute.
Um,
And I
yeah,
like how,
I
like, he's like the new guy, and, like, she
yeah,
was the new girl. Like, I think it gives
exactly.
her a lot too as, like, this kind of now you're the mentor, Jubilee, what do you do?
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, whatever, we're still young and we love each other," which is something that, like, Jean and Scott are so much older. Like, they're the first X-Men. Now it's, like, the newest X-Men falling in love, which I think is just, like, a really
Hmm.
cool bookend parallel because you've got this
Yeah.
romance that is essentially crumbling because of a tragedy in the family, and then one that is just rising and starting, but they both have their own issues because of who they are and their circumstances. I think it's a great
Yeah.
like different bookend, and that's where it can still relate to I think the younger fans who are just coming around to this series.
Yeah, and they have this great moment together, Jubilee and Roberto, where she's like he like gives him like a card, like a business card, and she's like, "Oh, what's your job?" Just like being like a rich like playboy or something, and then he cheekily says, "Don't forget single," and I'm like, "Oh, you want Jubilee
Yep.
to know you're single, okay?" And it was just like there's like little moments like that where it's just like the writing is like so smart and like yeah, anyway, so then that brings us and obviously this episode ends as we talked about, Magneto saying the title of the episode as well, to me my X-Men, because it says in Charles' will that he left like the X-Men to Magneto. So now we
Yeah,
have this
which is just such a
um
cool way to end the premiere because okay,
yeah,
have you seen Mad Men or no?
no.
Okay, I'm gonna spoil the first episode of Mad Men. I mean, it's the first episode, so it doesn't spoil literally anything else. But the whole
Okay.
time, you're getting the vibe that Don Draper is like this cool guy. He sleeps with all these women. He's like a hot shot, kind of not rebellious. He's very still like well put together. But then the final episode ends, and he comes home from work, and he goes up to the room and kisses his kids goodnight. And it's like, holy shit, this guy you thought was like this playboy or whatever has a
Uh,
family and kids. And that's the whole inciting drama for the entire series, because the whole thing is about how he's like trying to balance like this home life and his work life, his work
mm,
persona, and like who is Don Draper, who is the real Don Draper. And I think that's just such a cool like twist for the audience in that show, where it's like, oh shit, he's married with kids. This adds so much, this
mm,
complicates so much. And I feel like that was the same thing here, where you're going to the end and it's like, you think it's going to end with Cyclops saying, okay, well, you are like, let's do this, I'm leading you now. But then it kind of pivots, and it's like, who did he leave it to? And you get that great shot of like the broken picture frame, and he picks it up, and you hear his voice and you know immediately, but you're like, oh
yeah,
my god, like, because it makes so much sense, and it makes sense in what their relationship is. But Cyclops doesn't know their relationship, so it was such an awesome way to end the episode. And that's, I think, where it segues from the kind of episodes we're used to seeing with the original series and now this series, where it's like, oh no, we're taking things in a different direction. And I really liked it a lot.
yeah, for sure. And so that brings us to like a very interesting dynamic now that we have amongst the X-Men, because it feels like, and you can never really tell if he's being completely sincere or not, but it feels like, Magneto is really going to try to embody all of what Charles was trying to do and make it so that humans and mutants can coexist. So we start off episode 2 with him going on this like rampage. It's not the right word, but he's like,
Tirade.
you know, tirade almost, where he's like saving mutants and humans alike. And,
Mhm.
the audience is shocked. The characters in the show are shocked. Scott isn't really buying it yet.
Right.
Um, he's gonna be skeptical because obviously he cares about this team so much. And but because, Magneto is a terrorist in the eyes of the US government, they do have to hold a trial for him to to pay for his crimes basically. And, the best way that he went about it the best way he could, which was to just turn himself in and to let the
Right.
trial happen.
Hmm.
And while the trial happens, oh, sorry, brushed over this way too quickly. We get kind of hints that Rogue and Magneto had a past relationship.
Hmm.
Um, and later on, I forget when this gets confirmed. Oh, I don't think we
She
really
confirms
see
it,
it
I think,
until
in a later
episode
episode.
5.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
she
episode
talks
5,
about
when
the
she tells
past.
Gambit.
Yeah. What we're getting
Um,
in this episode is more just like, and I was confused at first because it's like Magneto would say
yeah,
something and the rest of the group would like not be for it, and then you kind of look over at her, the camera would pay attention to her, and she would kind
yeah,
of like make like an unsure, uneasy face, and like I was
yeah,
picking up what they were putting down. I think it's an interesting direction to take, and I think it makes more sense once you've seen how it plays out. It obviously makes it make more sense, because like while watching it, I was a little weird. I was like, Rogue and Magneto. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know. But I think it makes more sense when you look at like after episode 5 and kind of look back. It makes a lot of sense. Like he's the only one she can touch, and her, it doesn't affect him. Like I think that's
yeah,
something to be said about that. But it just added
yeah.
another cool little twist.
For sure, and it's almost like it pretty much mirrors, like, the Magneto and Mystique relationship that we
Very
see in the
much, yeah.
live action films,
Hmm.
except at this one isn't, like, very one-sided. It's not just, like, Mystique pining after Magneto. It was, like, very much a mutual, like, shared love and appreciation for one another, because I think
Hmm.
they were both able to provide something for the other that they were kinda missing.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely talk about that more later on. The big event that happens in episode 2 is that while at the UN for the trial, the Friends of Humanity ambush it. Some guy named the Executioner infiltrates, because I don't want people to get it twisted. It's not just the executioner, it's executioner, which I think is a cheeky little play on words, because it's like
Yeah,
X-Men,
almost like
executioner.
almost like the show's called, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um, And so he has this powerful weapon that is able to reverse mutant powers. He obviously shoots it at Magneto, but it ricochets off of him and hits Storm. And Storm is the one who loses her powers, which
Mhm.
was when I was like, oh, holy shit. I don't think anyone is safe in this series.
Right. Well, and I yeah, what you said, like no one's saving the series, and we learned that even harder in episode 5. But I think it's really
Yeah.
interesting because I think in the old show, and this is not to diss the old show, but because of the structure of it, I think she would have gotten him back by the end of the episode, or it would have been a two-parter, and
Mm,
she would have gotten it back the very next episode. I like how it
sure.
ends. Right. This is the episode where it ends with her literally like getting on a bus and saying, "Sorry,
Yeah.
guys, like I'm out. Like I'm going to live
Yeah.
my own life." And it's like, holy shit. And like
Yeah.
again, once you watch the whole series, it's like you're more comfortable with the fact that like the one like black female character is like being sent away. Like I
Mm,
at first I was like, oh come on, but then I was like, okay, she's not her character's not done. But
yeah.
at first I was like, oh, like really? Like this is the one. It's kind of like the Avengers Endgame thing of like, oh, of all the of main Avengers you're gonna kill the only woman. Okay, all right, cool. Like like with Black
Yeah.
Widow, when people were like, you couldn't kill like literally anyone else, you had to kill the one original woman on the team.
Right.
And that's kind of how I felt. And but then immediately they like make it a point to show like, no, we're the whole arc for her is her getting her powers back. Which I think is again brilliant. It twists what you think and what you know and who you think is safe and what you think is going to happen because Storm arguably has the best action moment in the first episode where she like freezes over the freaking water or whatever with ice and like she
Mm,
has some of the coolest moments in episode 1. I think a lot of that's to emphasize for you to be like,
hmm.
whoa, look at what this new animation can do with Storm's powers, only for Storm to not have powers. It's a kind of fun like
Right.
meta thing for the audience as well in that sense. While we're on episode 2, just because I have a favorite moment, can
Yeah.
we also talk about Morph? Because Morph gets a whole new like remodel, relook. Obviously,
Yes.
they're trying to lean into the non-binary thing even harder by like making them look a little bit less gendered in the presentation.
Yeah.
But my
Yeah.
favorite thing is again, it's kind of like that anime influence where like there's that anime look where like when a character's embarrassed or shy or like reacts some way, like their eyes kind of change shape and their mouths
Yeah.
change shape. There's a great moment at like the dinner table because I think a lot of the humor in this episode is them trying to adjust to Magneto being their leader because he's so serious that like they're
Uh-huh.
kind of more of like throws a quip at the dinner table or whatever, like makes like a quip or whatever, and Magneto's like, "Oh, my family's dead," blah blah, blah. And Morph kind of just looks at the camera and like makes like a little face, and it is the funniest reaction. Like Morph is great comedy in this series. Morph
Yeah.
is like the one you don't realize you need until the end, where you're like, I'm glad Morph was there at those moments because Morph is
Yeah.
not necessarily a focal point of the series, but I do like how
Mhm.
they are incorporated and kind of give those little peppered in seasonings when you need it. But I found that moment, just that whole like them bantering with Magneto, trying to like small talk and them just like not succeeding to be really really
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely I forgot to mention that Morph had joined the intro as Sid Bishop at the
And just
beginning.
Magneto.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what's very interesting is they literally change the intro every episode depending on who's in it. So like after Storm loses her powers, Storm is
Mm.
not in the intro anymore. After
Mhm.
a Bishop and Magneto die, Magneto and Bishop are not in the intro. Like I think it's really
Yeah.
cool that they like kind of play around with the intro to let you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
like
yeah.
no one's safe. Storm's off the team. Sorry. And then it's like no, she's not. Wink, wink, wink. You
Right,
know.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah. But I definitely love the addition of Morph. Like you said, Dill, like they're pretty much just used as not just used as the comedic relief because that kind of I feel like trivializes their presence in the
No, well,
show.
because
I
they also
definitely
have a big
wanted.
emotional arc too at the end, like, they
Yeah.
confess their love to Wolverine, which we've been saying, we've been shipping it, and they finally do it. They finally do it.
Okay, I was holding that one for later, but I
Okay,
can't
yeah,
wait to
no,
talk
we'll
about
talk
that
about it.
by the end. But yeah, I just feel like I really wanted like a big morph centric episode, which I don't feel like we got, like how we got the episode Courage in season 4, I think it was. But anyway, hopefully there's better things to come for
Well,
Morph
and there
in
is we know there's a second
future
season,
seasons.
obviously, just based
Yeah.
on how this finale ends, and they announced they were gonna do a season 2 before the finale, so I think they kind of knew, like, if for some reason this really bombs, we won't do a season 2, and we'll, like, try to figure out what we're gonna do at the end of season 1, but I think
Uh-huh.
they saw the positive reception and were like, "Nope, it's gonna be season 2," and then they put the to be continued on there, like, I think we're gonna get some more stuff, I think we're gonna get more Wolverine and more Beast, like, some of these people who took more supporting roles this season, and Morph has another great moment in a future episode that I won't say right now, but we will
Okay.
talk about. Yeah.
The other bomb that drops on us at the end of
Episode 2.
episode 2 is there is another Jean Grey that turns up at the school's door, asking for the help of the X-Men, which
Yep.
brings us to episode
Well,
3.
is the baby born in this episode? I think it is, right? Or is it episode 3? I can't remember. I don't remember. I
Hold
don't, but
on.
because I think is the baby born
Oh,
and then
wait.
then the clone shows up, I think, or then Jean shows up, the real Jean.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. Yes, yes.
because that was a
This
really
is
good moment too for Wolverine too, where he's like,
yes.
uh,
Um,
yeah,
this was one of my favorite comedic moments from this episode. Still, was when Jean goes into labor and she's like, "Logan, he's here," and he's like, claws ready to go. He's like, "Who? Apocalypse?" And she's like, "The baby." And then she
yeah,
like, telepathically gets his keys and his coat on him, and he's like, "Oh shit!"
yeah. I
Like,
love it, love it, I love
and
it.
I
Yeah.
just loved that it was like this was also something that I was going to mention later, but I'll just talk about it now. I just loved how they handled the love triangle of
Mhm.
Jean, Logan, and Scott in in this season, just because it felt kind of more plausible. Like I feel like with the
Yeah.
animated series, like they're fully in love, they're getting married. Like, look, excuse me, Logan doesn't stand a chance. And not that I think Logan really has a chance now, but I just love that we got more moments specifically between Jean and Logan to show
Right.
that there is obviously some kind of connection there.
Well, and the
And
other
this
element of
being the
that,
first big one.
yeah, and the other element of that is you also need to show a little bit of strain with Jean and Scott, which I think was also
Hmm.
important because you need to see how why she would ever choose Logan over Scott. It's not just because of Logan, but also because of Scott. And I think they do a good job in making it. And this is something we see in normal life too, is that like when you have a baby, that adds a lot of complicated stuff to a marriage just because it is an extra human being you have to take care of. But also if you think about it, like think about how many divorces are due to a kid having like autism or a kid having a disability that like
Mm,
either the father will leave the family or the mother will say I can't handle this, or they resent each other for like whatever reason, which is terrible. I don't condone that. I think you should love whatever
mhm,
kid you have no matter what. But I do think that is an interesting thing that happens, is like a lot of divorces are stemmed from the children, and just
mhm,
the way you take care of a child together. And I think that's what is really interesting about this season. I think it's what's really interesting about the Star Wars series that I think you still haven't gotten to yet. But the
mm,
episode 7, like that's a big crux of Han and Leia's relationship, is the addition of their kid and what happened with their kid. So yeah,
mhm.
kids complicate. Kids are great, but kids complicate. Put that on a shirt.
Kids are great, but they complicate.
Yeah, but I think
That's their
that's
slogan.
really, yeah, that's our slogan. Let's hear it for Logan. I don't know. Let's keep going.
Okay, so episode 3, Fire Made Flesh. This is the whole episode where we learn the backstory between these two Jean Greys. So apparently, at some point when Sinister had Jean Grey captured, he actually was able to make a clone out of Jean Grey. So one of them, so the Jean Grey that we met at the beginning of this episode, who's pregnant and gave birth to Nathan, um, is the clone of Jean Grey, and the Jean Grey
Mhm,
that turned up at their door is the original Jean
mhm.
Grey. So both of their memories are kind of interlocked with one
Right.
another. They can't really remember who did what
Yeah.
and when, you
And I think
know.
that's an important key too, because like the whole time you could be like, so this whole time the clone was deceiving him, but really no, she thought she was Jean Grey. And I think
Right.
that's like that makes it more excusable, the fact that like he fully had a baby with another person. That's a whole
Yeah.
9 months. So I think that's a really important distinction, is that they're like, no, like she didn't know that she was the clone, you know.
Yeah. And then the other thing they have to do, so then once Sinister gets his hands on the clone and Nathan, because that was his plan all along, is that he wanted Jean and Scott to make an offspring. He injects Nathan with a techno virus that has no cure. So now they have to turn to Bishop to send Nathan into the future so that they can hopefully find a cure for him, which was devastating
Yeah,
to
really tough.
watch, for especially for Scott, who is just so like, no, I'm not going to do what my parents did to me, to
Yeah.
him. Like, he will never feel abandoned. Like, I always want to be there for him. And it's just not the right move for Nathan's health. So
Awful. Yeah,
they have
it
to
was
send him
really
to the future.
yeah, really tough to watch, but again,
Yeah.
like, really genius too. Like, a genius story device that totally changes Gene and Scott's relationship, totally changes Scott's character, totally, adds to a really cool twist later when we find out who Nathan grows up to be. Like, I think it
Hmm.
really lent to a lot of cool, interesting that's why I keep saying they're the main characters of the season, because this really is the one storyline that follows through from episode 1 to episode 10.
Yeah. And so the clone of Jean Grey and the actual Jean Grey kind of have like a out together. The clone decides that like she needs to leave and like move on, especially now that she doesn't have Nathan anymore. I guess she doesn't really feel like she has a purpose here, so she kind of has to go find herself. And I just thought it was funny that at the end of the episode she's like, call me Madeline Pryor. And I'm like, did you just have that name like ready to go in your back pocket? Like, where did that come from? So we uh and then this episode ends with Storm meeting Forge, who says that he can reinstate her powers. So
Mhm,
this wasn't the last we were gonna see of Storm, luckily, in the last episode.
mhm.
Or whenever the episode, yeah,
Yeah.
episode 2. So now this brings us to episode 4. And we got another episode with Mojo in it. And to
Your
be honest
favorite, your
with you,
lover,
Jill,
your boo, your boo thing,
I was
your your honey bunny.
listen, I was enjoying the series so much that I didn't even really mind
Oh.
Mojo's presence
Yeah,
in this episode.
yeah, I didn't hate it. I think this is the weakest episode just because it is kind of the most like it's the least I don't know the word like least relevant I guess, but I did
Sure.
like Jubilee getting her own little side mission episode. Like, it really helped
Yeah.
develop their character. They did finally kiss in this one, I think, right? This is the one where they
Yeah.
kiss. Yeah, like that's the thing
Oosh.
is like it does at least like progress her character, so I liked it.
Yeah.
This is a weird episode because it's like it's 2 episodes in one. It's the SpongeBob thing
Yeah.
of you're getting 2 episodes in one,
Yeah.
which took me off guard because I read the title. I'm like, what does this mean? Slash part 1? What?
Yeah.
But because the Storm storyline, like, how do you even make that intercut with the Mojo episode? Like, it was better just let them stand alone, which is also something I
Right.
appreciated. Instead of having an A plot and a B plot, they literally just made 2 A plots and just put them in the same episode. Like, I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the Mojo stuff, it's fun. It was fine. I think because it's a small dose, it's okay. And because, like you said, this is
Mm.
a very heavy season. So like maybe you do kind of need that levity. And it works better in this context than it does in a season that's already so silly that it's like, all right, Mojo's just the cherry on top of my like headache Sunday. Whereas here it's like, I kind of need some Mojo. I need that Milky Way
Right.
after I ate that salad.
Yeah, 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 for
Mhm.
sure. Just a very fun, at least first half of our ep. Um, Oh yeah, and what I thought was kind of interesting was Morph has been kind of doing this thing where he'll just like transform into a different person, and I thought that it was interesting in episode 3, like right before Jean Grey showed up, he transformed into Spiral, who
Mhm.
ended up being in this episode. So I was like, oh, was that like a little teaser, a little Easter egg for
Yeah.
like what was to come?
Well, and
Um,
I love how more while you mentioned that is also a way to like get the other X-Men in the show without making every episode about, because they only have 10
yeah,
episodes. They don't have a whole 20 episode season. Like, have an episode be about Iceman or have an episode be about Scarlet Witch. Instead it's
right,
like Morph can just like turn into Archangel for like an action sequence, or like turn
yeah.
into a
Oh,
Avenger
like
maybe.
I think
Like,
Quicksilver at some point. I think he
yeah.
became
Yeah,
like
he
really
might
quick.
he
Yeah.
might turn into someone else a little bit later.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Maybe I don't know. But like
Who's
I
to
like that
say?
where it's like now we can just use Morph as like kind of what we wanted Taskmaster to be in Black Widow.
Right.
Just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, now that's this character. Now it's this character. Which I kind of
And
think
so
is cool.
now Storm and Forge are quite literally in the trenches trying to find a cure for Storm, and they accidentally awaken this demonic god called the Adversary, who's
Hmm.
very scary. It was
Oh,
very, very scary. Sometimes this series got like really, really dark and scary, scarier than the original, and I think it's because the original was for children and they didn't want to traumatize them. But what I also found interesting, Dill, was that how in our past series, when we had two-parters, they just came right after each other. When in this instance, we kind of left a little bit on a cliffhanger and then we're
Mhm.
brought to a different episode 5, titled Remember It, and then we don't get part 2 of Life Death until episode 6. So let's talk about episode 5. There's an attack on Genosha. The Sentinels attack Genosha, which has kind of become this safe haven for mutants
It's
that
it's it's the bait and switch. It's so good. It's too good to be true, and it
yeah,
made us so
seriously.
happy. It was like Zootopia for mutants. I was like, oh my god, yes! It's like that
Yeah.
scene of Judy Hopps riding the train into Zootopia, and I was like, oh my god, we're so excited. And I was just like, fuck this. They're totally
Um
gonna break our hearts. Ugh.
yeah. Yeah. Magneto asks Rogue if she wants to be on the council and help kind of lead Genosha with him. This is when she talks about the backstory between him and her and
Magneto.
Magneto and how that all came about. We also get this scene where Jean is kind of like refreshing all of her memories. She's trying to piece everything together, and Logan's there to kind of help her out. And
Mm,
she has this moment of weakness where they actually share a kiss,
mm.
and he just says something like, "Oh, it's you, like you're Jean Grey, he's Scott Summers. Those are the rules, and you just forgot him for a second." So he kind of like brushes the whole thing
Very
off.
mature. I
Yeah.
think Logan season 3 or season 2 would have like just started macking on her, but I think
Oh yeah.
yeah, I think he's got some good restraint here, which again shows growth for his character. Again, we don't get a
Yeah.
lot of Wolverine, but when we do, it's really important. I also think it's really
Mhm.
cool how this kind of opens and like a lot of the episode, the framing device is like this like news kind of broadcast where they're interviewing
Mhm.
the mutants, and I like how like you kind of get everyone's different perspective, especially Cyclops, who's like just trying to process all this trauma of losing his son, losing his job essentially as the leader of the X-Men all at
Yeah.
once, and just trying to
Losing
comprehend
his
it.
wife kind of in a way.
Kind of in a way, yeah, yeah. I mean, finding out his wife is not his wife, but a clone of his wife,
Yeah.
like, what? You're like, it's really
Yeah.
crazy. Like, he's dealing with so much, and the fact that his wife is outside kissing like another guy, like, and he doesn't even know, but like maybe he knows she might. Like, he's like, she's gonna fucking go back to Logan. Like, there's just so
Yeah.
much he's dealing with that I really like how like he's the one who has to be sitting down being interviewed. And I think that added a lot to it too. Like this whole
Because
episode, I think is flawless top to bottom. It's I think the best episode of
yeah.
television I watched in like 8 years.
Now that's high praise.
Mhm.
Wow.
I agree.
And also for Logan's perspective, like this is a like not a new version of Jean Grey because she is the original, but like she isn't the Jean Grey that like married Scott and like had Scott's baby. So he could be looking at this Jean Grey like an opportunity for them to kind of like rekindle something. But instead, he's really just like he's walking away and basically like breaking his own heart before Jean can do it for him. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I mean, I have a
And
theory.
okay,
I
you want
I
to
think
tell me or you want to
I
wait?
I mean, I think we know. I think we know what's going on with Wolverine. I think we he might have a new love interest. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Then let's talk about it
Who can turn
later.
into Jean Grey whenever they
Okay, all
want.
right, all right. We don't have to make it
So
weird now.
if it's a physical thing, he can get Jean Grey whenever he wants Jean Grey. But if it's an
Oh
emotional
my
thing,
god.
I think one of the other characters is giving him a lot more emotionally than Jean could ever give him.
I don't think if I were Morph, I would want someone who wants me turning into another person.
I'm not saying all the time, but like every now and then, if like it's like wearing a costume in the bedroom. Like sometimes you role play. I mean, it's not like a bad thing to do it once in a while. You can't do it every day though. It's not like this is my, this is my wife. She's a Disney princess. It's like no, like that's not what I'm saying.
Right,
But
right.
I don't know.
Wow, you just revealed a lot about yourself, Dill.
No,
Okay,
I
so
almost no. I actually, oh my god, I'll tell you off air, but I was almost gonna share a kink of a friend of mine, but I did not want to share that. So I very much did not use the terminology I was about to use because it would have given something away.
oh, okay. I already know what you're talking about. Let's
You
move
know what I'm
on.
talking about? Yeah, no,
Yep,
yeah, okay.
yep. Let's move on. Okay, so
He probably won't watch this, so it's okay.
this is when we get the backstory between Rogue and Gambit. And I couldn't tell if I was disgusted or if I was into it. I think it's just because my mind is
Magneto, you
trying to
mean?
get yeah, what did I
You
say?
said
Gambit?
Gambit. Yeah, I was
Okay,
like, how
sorry.
could you be disgusted? They're
No, no, no,
adorable.
no, no. No, 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 not disgusted
It's
between
the cutest
Rogue and
romance
Gambit.
between a Remy since Remy and Linguini.
Yeah. That's a Ratatouille reference. Um No, sorry, Rogue and Magneto, and I couldn't tell if I was disgusted or if I was into it just because he just the way he just seems so much older than Rogue,
I
so
think
it
that's
feels kind
I
of gross.
I I would say I agree, but I think it's only because we've seen the movies and Ian McKellen is significantly older than Anna Paquin. But I think in the context of this show, I think they are closer to the same age.
Okay,
Not
he
close.
just
They're closer to the same age. Not
I
still not
mean,
close in age, but she's got some
he's
gray hair.
yeah, but I think that's like because of her powers. I don't think that's
Hmm.
like white hair from age.
Oh, it's like an
Like his
Princess
is
Anna
like
thing.
very much like he has full like white hair. Like he
But he
could
has
be
full hair. He's not balding yet. He's a
yeah, but
silver
it's like
fox.
yeah, okay, so he could be like I was gonna say like the youngest he could be is probably like 60s.
Yeah, and I think
And
she's
the
in there like
oldest rogue is in my mind is probably like 30.
I think she's a little older. No, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know. That's the only reason why I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know. Um, but yeah, they did
Okay,
share
wait.
this
But he
like
was a kid during the Holocaust, so we can actually figure out his age. So he was like probably born in the mid 30s, and this is the 90s. So he's probably in his 60s, yes, or is
okay,
60, late 50s or 60.
yeah.
And she, let's say
Um,
she's like in her 30s.
all right. All right. They're two consenting adults. They can do what they want. I'm happy for them. And so yeah, so we get this huge attack on Genosha. I think the first I'm not sure what happens first. Oh, this has to happen first, where Magneto, who so lovingly saved the Morlocks, told Leech that he would never have to be afraid again, is protecting them, and his power is just no match for the Sentinel robot, and so they seemingly perish under a blast. Breaks my heart because Leech reminds me so much of another character. Um, just like anyone who's like a sweet little creature, I just think of Groot. So I'm
Oh,
like, oh, Leech. That broke my heart. And then we have the big sacrificial play at the end where Gambit protects Rogue and is taken out by the Sentinel. And I was like, holy shit, like, is this real? And we find out like it is. It's
yeah,
very much
and the way they
it's
end the episode
Dunzo.
too, it's where she's like, "I can't feel you anymore," and it's totally blackness or whatever. I'm like, "Oh my god."
Yes.
And just
Yeah.
his remember it,
Oof,
like, because
chills.
it's bad, it's a badass death, but it's also sad, but then it also
Yeah.
informs Rogue's character. Also, because it's like did you watch Degrassi? This comes up every episode now. I always bring up Degrassi. Did you watch
No,
Degrassi?
tell me about Degrassi, Dill, you
Well
tell me.
there's this, like this whole will they won't they with JT and Liberty, and then like they have a baby together, all this stuff, and then like because that's Degrassi,
Wait,
casually have a
okay.
baby together. No, but
Yeah.
like he starts a relationship with Nina Dobrev, Mia, it like starts a relationship with her, and then like at a party at literally Liberty's birthday party or whatever, realizes he's still in love with Liberty, goes outside to tell Liberty he loves her, gets stabbed and dies, and it's like holy shit, like that's what this is. It's Rogue finally
Mm,
realizing that like she loves
mm,
Gambit, and then she's going to tell him, and it's I hate
yeah,
it. I hate it, but I
yeah,
love it because it's the best storytelling I've seen in a long time. Like I said, probably 8 years, probably the best episode I've seen since like one of those like season 2 to 4 Game of Thrones episodes. But like, man, man, oh man, so good.
and just those 3 words at the end kind of, like, really confirms it because if Rogue was able to feel him, she would be, consuming his powers and his energy, but because none of that's happening, it's like, "Oh, it's because this man is fully a corpse right
Mhm.
now."
Yeah,
And so, just,
and it's a testament also to the
crazy.
fact that like Gambit has never been our favorite. Yeah, we've even talked about some of
Yeah,
the problematic stuff he's said and done, but like
done.
when you see this, you miss him, you're sad for him, you don't want him to die. You are fully Team Gambit. I think that's the power of this show is it's making you love characters you didn't necessarily love before. Like I love Jubilee this season. I freaking love her. I love Gambit this season. Like I like Magneto this season a lot. I like X. I think X is a very interesting character in the season. Like I think there's just so
Yeah.
many interesting things that like I just don't think you get from the original series as much. I like
The
Jean a lot this
only
season.
the only thing that worries me about this still is that I felt like up until this episode where he dies, I don't think Gambit did a ton in this season. And it makes me nervous that if people are just jumping into this season not watching the whole animated series,
Mm.
from from the 90s. It's like, are they gonna like care about this character as much as we do?
True. Yeah, they could have maybe done a little bit more with him and her earlier on in the
Yeah.
season before the Magneto stuff. Well, I think also because like maybe they just didn't want to copy the love triangle thing because they've already done it with
Mm,
Cyclops Jean. Whereas I feel like Gambit in this episode is very just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Like, like kind of pissed off about it rather than trying to like really win her back. He's like, all right, you've like made your decision, whatever. Like, like I feel like he's a
yeah.
little less not accepting, but like, a little just more pissed off about it rather than Logan, who's just kind of like more self-frustrated. I think Gambit's just more
Yeah.
like pissed off at the whole thing. I don't
Yeah.
know though. I still think they do enough stuff to endear Gambit to the audiences. I think it's one of those things where we have watched the whole show, so like it's hard to judge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I really I think this whole episode itself though was a whole good arc for him. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just so hard to talk about this episode because it's just so perfect. Like there's nothing to really
Yeah.
criticize for me, but it's so
Yeah.
tragic. Yeah.
That was just my one teensy little criticism.
No, that's fair.
So then we go to episode 6. This is Life Death Part 2. I was getting major Star Wars vibes at the beginning of this episode. So this
Hmm.
one is primarily outer space. And even though it's a continuation of Storm's storyline, it still kind of feels like a B plot to the
Mhm.
main storyline in this episode, which is that Professor's X, it's confirmed that he is still alive. He is going to start this relationship with Lalandra out in
Mhm.
space and become kind of this like emperor to the Shi'ar Shirar Shi'ar Empire?
You're asking me
Question
as if
mark.
I'm Stanley. I have no idea.
Okay. And so, this kind of debate happens where, she's marrying someone who's I thought it was interesting that her sister called Professor X Terran because that's the word that the Ravagers use to describe people from Earth in the
Mm,
Guardians movies. And I was like, "Oh, Terran." Um must be a thing in outer space. That's our
yeah.
species
When
name.
I go, I'll ask around and see if
Yeah,
that's what
confirm
people
for me, Dill.
still call them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or maybe it's outdated. Like maybe people in outer space like refer to us as Terran, and then someone hits them and is like, "You're not supposed to say that these days. They're
Yeah.
Earthlings or
Oh, yeah.
something." You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like maybe
Mhm.
it's a slur.
Yeah. It's like the Native American indigenous. Like, yeah. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So the only way that the empire will trust that he marries Lalandra is if he gives up his memories of Earth and the X-Men. And at first, he's seemingly like gonna do it. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, like if this is what I have to do, like, my X-Men don't need me anymore for some reason. But then he kind of really like he literally becomes a professor. He puts them all in the astral plane and he literally schools them on like coexisting and like why it's so silly that we're like fighting and why we can't coexist and all this stuff. And then once he learns about Gambit's passing, like he is like, nope, gotta go back to Earth. Sorry,
Mhm.
bye. And so in our B plot this episode, Storm is able to save Forge from the adversary, and then she's able to conquer her fears, which ultimately like unlocks her powers and she's able to get them back.
Hell
So
yeah.
it's kind of interesting that this weapon, however whatever it's programmed to do, kind of like seemingly doesn't work on mutants because I guess the genes are kind of always there and you just kind of excuse me, you just kind of have to wait for those cells to almost regenerate so that one day you can just kind of like you know, get him back. Or
Interesting.
maybe this is just like a one-time instance where she's just able to overcome.
I don't know. I'll admit, of all the episodes, this is the one I had the hardest time, like really just engaging with, just because.
Yeah.
And I love the series so much that like I think in retrospect, this episode's really great because it's the Charles Xavier episode. It's the Storm. It's like kind of setting us up for our final act where it's like X Charles is gone, Gambit's gone, Storm's gone. How are we gonna get some of them back?
Yeah.
Not Gambit obviously, but how are we gonna get the other two back? But I think I think because 5 was such a powerful note to end on, I just
Mhm.
6 was just like, all right, we got to do this, I guess. Like it was almost tough.
Right.
It's like going to a funeral. It's like you don't
Yeah.
want to. But even though that doesn't come till a little later, the funeral. But yeah, I felt like this was the hardest one for me to engage with. This is the one I would like to go back and rewatch if I were to go like watch another episode right now, just because I feel like I was still mulling 5 over in my brain so much. We
Yeah.
didn't even talk about the fact that the Watcher is in 5. Right before they pan over to Genosha, when they're having the party and like the fireworks are going off, the Watcher's in the sky looking. That indicated to me that things were not gonna happen. Okay, for
Oh,
us,
I didn't
things were gonna
even
go badly.
notice
Yeah,
that,
but he's in the
Dill. Good
sky. He
eye.
doesn't say anything, but it's like the
Yeah.
panning shot with like the sky's kind of purple and it like pans over to the party with the
Oh,
fireworks.
I'll have
So
to go back and watch that.
but that's the thing is like it was mulling over so much in my brain that like honestly I struggle to pay attention a little bit to 6, just because also
Yeah.
I was I want to shout out though Ross Marquand makes a return as Professor X, which is cool.
Yes.
Who
Yeah.
played who did he play? Red Skull.
Red
Um,
Skull in
and it
Infinity
was
War.
also one of the main characters on The Walking Dead. I love him, so very happy for him.
Yeah, we get a few you know, uh Marvel MCU casts joining this cast, and one of them we are actually going to talk about right now in episode 7, Bright Eyes. So we have Rogue going rogue. She's looking for vengeance to avenge Gambit's death. She wants to take out Trask and
Hmm.
the other guy whose name I cannot remember in this moment. And so she goes to a military base where she encounters Captain America, voiced by Josh Keaton, who voices him in the What If series,
Of course.
and Thaddeus Ross, who is also voiced by his um, actor from the What If series.
I was gonna say for the
Who's
What If series. I thought you were
Yeah.
gonna say
Oh, no,
William
no, no,
Hurt. I was
not
like, I'm sad to
no,
say.
not
Sad
unfortunately
to
not.
say. Yeah,
No.
no.
And
R.I.P.
so they kind of assist her in helping her find Trask, and eventually when they do, he's actually in Madripoor. Madripoor drop, woot woot. And so in killing and I just loved how Rogue was unabashedly just like doing whatever was necessary to like accomplish her goals. Like she really
Hmm.
gave no fucks in this
Yeah.
episode, and I just
Which
hate when
again,
they kind of
you couldn't do on Saturday morning cartoons. You
yeah.
couldn't do this. You couldn't. You
Yeah,
couldn't.
like she literally like she's having a conversation with Captain America 1 minute, and then she's like, "Okay, so then you won't be needing this," and then just chucks his shield
Freaking love it.
into
Yeah.
into the oblivion,
Hmm.
and because she's like, "You're not getting in my way. Thaddeus Ross isn't getting in my way. The other X-Men aren't getting in my way. Like I'm doing what I need to do because
I mean, this is
I'm
almost kind of what WandaVision was in a way,
yeah,
except she can't bring Gambit's body back, in the way
right,
that Wanda could try to bring Vision back. But like it reminded me
yeah,
of that, and I think this honestly does it even more successfully because I think they really set it up so well to where you really feel like this is justified in a way. You almost feel like the audience, you're like, I would never do this, but like I get why she is.
yeah. And I just love when they like allow their heroes to really not hold anything back, because it feels like whenever, even when a hero is lashing out, it feels like they have kind of one hand on the wheel telling them that, like, oh, this isn't the right thing to do. Like, they're able to get talked down off the ledge, where it's like her, it's just like, no, full, she's seeing red. It's full rage. And I just loved that. I love that choice.
Yeah.
But ultimately, though, it is Rogue's fault why this whole Sentinel army of like mindless zombies basically arises, because
Hmm.
once she kills Trask, that kind of unlocks like a Sentinel virgin, a Sentinel virgin,
This Sentinel don't fuck.
a Sentinel version of him. And basically, we find out that there are humans like all across Earth that have been like experimented on question mark that have this like Sentinel hybrid gene in them that turn them into a mindless army basically.
Mhm.
And the person behind this, our big baddie of the next 3 episodes, Tolerance's Extinction Part 1, 2, and 3, is Bastion, who is voiced by Theo James.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit. Okay,
Isn't
big
that
name,
fun?
big name.
I was
That's a
hearing
yeah.
him talk and I was like, I know this voice. Like, who
Well,
is
it's such a
this?
good voice too. It's
Yeah,
just such a
really good
distinct,
voice.
meaty voice. Yeah, I should pull up this cast because I'm sure there's people that I didn't even realize voice people.
And so, Dill, now over these next three parts, we meet Bastion. He's this kind of offspring of Nimrod, who was a sentinel. So he's kind of this like weird hybrid android himself. And I'm not gonna lie, I watched all these three episodes twice. I still really don't know what Bastion was trying to accomplish, because he was using humans to go after mutants, but he was a mutant himself, but he wanted to I just I I'm confused. So if you could tell me what
I
Bastion's goal was,
I
let me know.
sorry, I was looking at the cast list, so I
No, yeah.
kind of tuned
N
you out for a sec.
No, you're good.
But yeah, another Gil Birmingham was the voice of Forge. He is Jacob Black's father in Twilight. Just wanted to shout that out. Really
Oh,
great
okay.
indigenous actor. That was the only other name I recognized. I was just looking through. I was like, what other names? Because
Yeah.
I didn't even think of like actual like modern day celebrities getting cast in some of these roles, like Theo James or whatever.
No, yeah.
What was your question? Sorry, Kels.
What is Bastion's objective? What does he want?
um.
Like, does he just wanna, like, just destroy everyone?
I I don't know.
It's
It might
kinda
be one of it
confusing,
is a
right?
little confusing. I think he's just there to solely be a big bad, though I do think a lot of it stems from the fact that does he mention he was like a mutant and he got turned away or something by Charles
Yeah.
Xavier or something? I think that could be it. It's just like a revenge against mutants. Like
Like, he
he
just
was
wants
never
to
fully
destroy the
accepted
X-Men?
somewhere. Yeah, I feel like it's more of just like I was not accepted. No one's ever accepted me because I'm not a mutant. I'm not a human. Like I'm this weird like I think it's just the indifference of it, just being like frustrated that you're not, accepted. And I think that's a cool kind of parallel counter to Roberto, where it's like he's the same way, where he's like, no one accepts me, but they take him in. And I think for him, he's just Bastion's too far gone. He was never kind of welcomed in or accepted. I don't really know. I think that's the main motivating factor is just who he is, trying kind of reflecting his anger. I don't know though. We can look further into it.
Yeah, it was just, like, really confusing, and I can't believe we didn't talk about this when it happened. I don't remember which episode it happens in, but Roberto, speaking of Roberto, he does have this full like coming out scene to his mom with him and Jubilee where he, comes forward and is like, "Oh, this scene was also very comical because Jubilee is like prepping him. She's like, okay, you know what, take it slow. I'm going to be there with you. Just like, find the right words." And then he just walks in and goes, "Mom, I'm a mutant." And then, like, without even blinking, his mom is like, "Yeah, I kind of know." And so it was just like very, like, it felt like very parallel to like an actual like coming out scene. And what we learn is that because the DaCosta family is like so rich and powerful in the scene, that even though his mom and his family are going to be accepting towards him and have kind of known all along that he's been a mutant, they're like, of course, you're going to have to keep this under wraps because we can't have like the company and like all of our friends and investors finding out that we have a mutant in the family. So you're going to have to, pay attention to who you're hanging out with and, kind of not do this. And
I
he's like, okay, rude.
Yeah. No, I did find an answer, a little bit of an answer.
Okay.
Cthulhu are you on Reddit says, uh, I think since he's part Sentinel, he's hardwired to hate and eradicate mutants, but since he's also part human, he decided to go the capitalist and colonialist route to exploit them. So I guess that makes a
Mm.
little bit of sense. And, just the idea that, in the future, the mutants kind of dominate the humans. So he wanted to kind of like even it out and give the humans the power instead of letting mutants dominate. I think it's really just animosity for who he is because he is this hybrid. He is kind of like struggling with his own identity, doesn't know his place. So he's kind of taking it out on everything else in a way.
Okay. I
Yeah.
also just reached out. I phoned a friend to get this answer as well. And he said he wants to get rid of all mutants because he's basically Nimrod. and he wants the human race to evolve by making sentinels that can procreate and reproduce. So
There you go.
basically, he doesn't want to get rid of all the humans. He just wants to make the humans stronger so
Right.
that it's basically all human sentinel hybrids. So
Right.
this makes so much more sense. I'm so
Mhm.
glad we both
Yeah. No, it's fine.
used our
And again,
resources
it's a
available to
little
us.
unclear, and I think comics might
Yeah.
sort that out. But and the thing is though, there we go. We didn't really know, but we still love this series because like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, he's a bad guy who needs to be stopped, and I think that's kind of you
Yeah.
know a power of the series is you don't necessarily need to know all the motives. You just need to know that he is angry and pissed off, and he's dangerous. He is legitimately frightening. I think he's more frightening than friggin' Sinister and Apocalypse and all these other characters. Like I think this is one of the more sinister
Yeah.
villain, not sinister, the
Well,
wrong choice of words, but dastardly.
yeah, because I just think Sinister is just like doing the most, which makes him less threatening almost. Whereas like Nimrod is just like very like composed and is just like knows that he's so powerful, like he really doesn't even have to lift a finger to do
Hmm.
anything. Cause he's just like, oh, like, you know, fuck you, I don't care.
Right.
Um, but anyway, like I was saying before when we were trying to find those answers, Dill, any thoughts on the coming out scene between Roberto and to his mother and all that?
No, I mean it's what we've seen in so many great X-Men projects. It reminded me of X2 a lot with Iceman. Like it is just such
Mhm.
a great reminder that the show is very woke and that the show is essentially a metaphor for LGBT, or just like different racial dynamics in general. I think it's very important. Like he has a line earlier where he literally talks to the soldier in the premiere where he's like, "I was born this way. I can't help it," and that's like the crux of
Yeah.
it. And I
Yeah.
think that this is a very important it's always important to remind everyone that like this is what X-Men is. It's not just this, it's also this. And I think a lot of people, especially because now we have social media, we didn't have that during the original run, but a lot of people complaining about how their show's too woke, and I'm like, bro, where you been? The same with the morph thing, same with this thing. It's like
Mm.
it's always been woke. It's just you now are have a platform to say how angry you are about it, or you're just realizing that
Yeah.
you have a problem with wokeness that needs to I don't know. I don't understand people's
Yeah.
problems with it because it is such a blatant metaphor. But I think that's what makes X-Men unique and different from the rest.
Interesting. So with this rise of Bastion's character, the divide between Magneto and Professor X becomes more potent than ever
Hmm.
because Magneto is just like, no, we're not coexisting anymore. We got to defeat this guy. And like, all of humans are always going to hate us. So he pretty much wants to make his own team of people that are just, Team Mutant and that's it. And Rogue and Roberto actually gladly take his side in this, which is surprising, which surprises the audience and the X-Men, dare I
Hmm.
say. Maybe not so much for Rogue. Um, but I think it was, coming off the heels of like getting rejected by his family. Roberto is also kind of like in a place of like, yeah, yeah, also fuck these humans. I don't give a
Yeah.
shit.
Hmm.
Um, and so, oh, we have this dastardly scene at the end of part 2 where everyone is fighting Magneto trying to get him to stop, and Logan kind of is able to get his claws into him, and it has little to no effect on Magneto, and then he's just able to turn and kind of, it looks like he's almost extracting the all of the
Adamantium.
metal.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
metal. It's
Yeah.
he has the ability to bend and forge it in his own way.
And
Yeah.
oh, you just see this like really contorted Logan that's just seemingly getting ripped apart.
Hmm.
And so he kind of has to spend the rest of this series
Yeah.
healing with Morph
I
at
think
his bedside.
season 2 we're gonna get a lot of the rehabilitation. I think is that's gonna be a
Yeah.
big part of Logan's character. Yeah, let's talk about Morph because Morph is in love with Logan and it's so cute. Um,
Yes. So we have this moment where everyone's trying to get him to like heal. Even Scott has a moment where he's like, "Come on, like do what you do best, like heal." And like
yeah,
it's just like
she
also
and
a
it's like do this for like she needs this, like she needs you.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we both
Interesting
or like we
stuff.
both know she needs this or like it's
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.
And then so then Morph has their moment where they sit down at the table at his bedside, and sh- turns into Jean and says like, I love you, Logan. And so is there any debate at all that they were just putting on a character and just saying I love you like as Jean would to help him,
I think
or
it
was that more speaking through Jean?
I think it was their way of telling Logan without needing to do it themselves. Is I was
Mm,
just that way of Logan is like, yo, Morph, I know you confess your love, and they could be like, no, that was just Gene, like, bruh.
right, right.
But in actuality, no, I think
Mm.
Morph is clearly in love. I mean, there's a great shot in like the first episode where like they turn into Sabretooth and they start like tussling, like it's almost
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
haha,
yeah.
you're like, I really think Morph is, I think Morph's in love with Logan. I ship it. I think that'd be a really cool direction for the show to go in. It would piss so many fans off, like so many fans off, but I really want to see it. Like it would piss a
I
lot of
want
like
it to happen
the right wing,
more
like
than
yeah,
anything else in my life.
it would piss off a lot of like the conservative fans who were just like, this show's too woke, and it's like the non-binary person's gonna fall in love with, of all characters, Wolverine.
The
Like,
macho manly man who's supposed to be this womanizer. Come on. Oh, it's too perfect. I want
do
it.
it. Do it. Season 2.
I
Do it.
want
Do
it.
it. Wokeness,
Do it, you
wokeness, wokeness. Do it.
cowards. Okay.
Do it. I do think we're
So
gonna get a
then
gay relationship at some point. I think it has to happen at some point. I mean,
it's
who
gonna
else?
happen.
Who else? Though everyone's in like some sort of relationship. I guess some people could be, pan or bi
Single.
or something. But yeah, um,
Oh. Oh yeah. Or yeah, that.
no. But like, I'm trying to think of other characters who have not defined a sexuality and have also not been in a relationship in the show. I don't know. We'll workshop it, but I'll write Disney an email tomorrow.
We'll come up with some
Well,
ideas
it's Morphin and
for
Wolverine. That's what it's
Marvel.
gonna be. It's gonna be that. That's gonna be the first queer
Exactly.
relationship in the show. Yeah.
So then, after the U.S. launches missiles at asteroid M to basically, it's like called the Magneto Protocol, where they had this fail safe where if things were getting too bad, they were just gonna blow it up. It's very sending a missile to New York in Avengers 2012
Hmm.
esque. Um, so they send these missiles up to asteroid M with all the X-Men on it. And Charles and Magneto this entire time have been in the astral plane together, have just been like in Magneto's mind, just trying to like heal everything kind of from the inside out, which I
I
thought
love
was
how they're like at a
beautiful.
bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really cool setting. Like this stuff at first, I was like, wait, where are they? What's going on? And then I realized it was like
No,
an
yeah.
astral plane situation. It was a really cool device. To
Yeah.
really just let them hash it out. Really.
And it was it's like really interesting to have this like really big heavy conversation between two men, and instead of just having them like fight it out and use like brute force and violence, they're just like sitting down and having a conversation, which I think is
Hmm.
like a super powerful message to send.
Right. Right.
um and so they, Charles is kind of able to kind of unlock his mind in a way where he can see, a different perspective on everything that's going on. And it's good thing too, because they kind of need Magneto to stop Bastion and to stop asteroid M from literally plunging into Earth.
Hmm.
um and so by doing this, Magneto is able to just destroy everything, which was a really interesting the way they
Visual.
animated it in the
Yeah.
sky of it blowing up. I thought that was really cool. And so it kind of sends the X-Men who are there into different points of time and space. So Rogue and who is it? It's Jean and Scott get taken to the future, where they see a version of Nathan in the
Hmm.
future. And Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Xavier, Magneto are all taken to the past, like 300 BC or 3,000 BC Egypt, where they meet a young version of Apocalypse, it seems.
Yes.
And then we get a title card that says to be continued. Oh,
Yeah.
not to mention, sorry, real quick, we get a shot of like 6 months later, Forge and Bishop are kind of talking about like needing to go on this like time heist to save the
Hmm.
X-Men. So it's very much setting up like a Days of Future Past kind of scenario. And there's a wall of the X-Men behind him, and like most of them have like presumed dead, presumed dead, presumed dead. And then
Yeah.
you just see, I thought it was interesting that there was a picture of Wanda Maximoff that said off world. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I wonder what that
Because we
means.
did get her a few seasons ago for like one
Yeah, I think
episode. So
season
like,
4, yeah.
yeah. because they refer to her as Scarlet Witch too, not Wanda
Yeah.
Maximoff. So I don't know if that has
Yeah.
anything to do with anything, but
Yeah.
yeah, very very interesting way to end. Very excited for what's to come. I'm exhausted just from talking about it because there's so many great things. We didn't even really
Yeah.
talk about the fact that Nathan is Cable. Really, I mean that was another big thing that we
Oh,
really
yeah,
haven't
there's
touched
just
on much.
so much to go
Right.
over.
Well, because that's just another thing that just adds another extra tint to it because, like, the idea that Nathan is here, but he's grown up and they didn't have the time with their son. But that last scene in the last episode is so good where he's like on a message with them where they're talking to him and like Scott takes off his glasses and he's like, "Look at my eyes, boy," like all that stuff. Like it's
Mm,
just so good. I
mhm.
think that's what makes this like have a really consistent through line is that whole storyline with Nathan and with as Cable and then with the two clones and Jean the two Gene clones and Scott, like that whole like kind
Yeah.
of quartet. Just so interesting. I just think there's so much just setting up for the future, which is really really interesting. Um, Still don't know what's up with Wolverine if he's gonna heal right away. Morph's in love with
Mhm.
them. Gene and Scott are I guess they're back on pretty good terms, but still like, they've went through a lot.
Yeah.
Rogue's obviously been through a lot. It's just there's so much to now set up that is gonna be so exciting if they and I think they are gonna continue it. But
Yeah,
um yeah,
for
wow,
sure.
just so
And
good.
also, Jill, there was this interesting moment. I think maybe it was in part one where they were kind of like exploring the wreckage of Genosha and like desperately trying to find a survivor because they wanted like some semblance of hope. And Jean was like, "Oh, I sent someone, like it's another telepath." And there was this moment where Scott kind of perked up and was like, "Oh, Madeline." And it's just like, "Oh my God, this guy is between a rock and a hard place right now." Like,
Yeah.
it was just
It's tough, yeah.
If I was the real Jean Grey, I would have been like, "Excuse the fuck out of me." Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean, Madeline?
Well, it's
Um,
it's in a way, I don't wanna say it's like catfishing, but it's like you fall in love with this what you think is this person, but is really this person
mhm.
type deal. It's like you
Yeah,
fell in love with someone you thought was Jean, but it was really Madeline. Like, it's very interesting. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Ugh.
lots to go over. Do you have a MVM and an LVM?
I mean, I would say the MVM, just based on how I think they really impacted the story of the season and how they implicated their powers and what they use their powers for. And then we got to see all sides of them. I'd say Magneto probably is my MVN,
Mm,
just really in the way they like Magneto made the series for me.
yeah.
But I also think Cyclops is a good one too. I think Cyclops is
Mhm.
just one I really feel for, even though I think he obviously got the shit end of the stick for a lot of this. But so I would
Yeah.
say Magneto's the most valuable of the season, both
Yeah.
story wise and power wise. But what about you?
My MVM, and it was solely just because I feel like she really came in clutch in the last battle and was kind of like the saving grace between not only taking out Sinister, but also finally getting the like band on Bastion was Jean Grey. I think that this was a complete 360 from what we saw in the original series. And
Hmm.
I was also really excited to just see more of her and seeing her more useful and having this whole like plot line of this like clone of hers this season. I just think that she's my MVM for sure.
Crushed it.
This
Yeah. LVM is tough because I don't think any of them were not valuable, but I think there were some
Yeah.
that were least valuable. Honestly, the one person I feel like really felt like an afterthought at most was Beast. And I feel bad. I never want to make
Mm.
him the least
Mhm.
valuable, but it
Mhm.
does feel like and they had slivers of really interesting stuff where he was almost kind of questioning Charles's motives and wondering
Yes.
like what is
Yeah.
going on. He has that great moment where he takes his sentinel arm and he's like, "How what is the sound of one hand clapping?" And then it like
Yeah,
slaps him
yeah,
in the face.
yeah.
Like he has good
Uh-huh.
moments, but I feel like kind of like how you felt about Morph. I just wish there was more of like a pronounced arc. Even Wolverine, having talked about it, I was gonna go Wolverine because it felt like Wolverine didn't do much this season, but Wolverine really did, and like it was always there consistently, even if they weren't the
Mhm.
focus. Whereas I think Beast is the one where I feel like I feel like Beast himself doesn't get a lot of big storylines. The one big one was the one of like him in that relationship with that girl, but like he's always been a supporting player. But here, because I think everyone was getting a big arc, I think he's the one who most felt shadowed. But that's not a
Yeah.
bad thing. He's just the least valuable. Does not mean that he is not valuable. It's just of all the great value we got, I think he's the one that was most underutilized. But I still love him.
Yeah.
I think obviously we love Hank. So
Yeah, Jill. Honestly, I had another name written down, but I think you kind of really sold me on Beast because now that I think about it, the name that I'd written down
Well, what
probably
did you
isn't
write down?
that fair. I honestly said it was Roberto just because he, in the beginning he was very like, oh, I don't really want to be here, like leave me alone, kind of like same vibes as like Jubilee. He was basically like the Jubilee of this season that she
Hmm.
was, in the past series. So I was just kind of like, a little underwhelmed by his character. He just like didn't make that great of an impact on me.
Yeah.
But I think I agree with your take on Beast as well. I
Okay.
definitely could have
Roberto's not a bad
gotten
pick, though.
much
He's
more of
not a bad
him.
pick. Yeah, and like we said,
Um
like everyone's so well, realized in the series, so it's really
Also,
really nice.
I forgot to mention this is like a whole other thing. All the other like random shots of Avengers we
Yeah, I
got
mean,
in part 3.
I really like to think that's just because it's like now we have the rights, let's do it. Because
Yeah.
we couldn't do it, because you see Spider-Man in episode I think 8 or 9, swinging through the
Yeah.
streets or whatever, and then you see in episode 10, right? It's you got Cap, Iron Man, I think
Yeah. Daredevil.
Daredevil. Oh yeah, Daredevil's in there. You got Hulk earlier when Morph turns into Hulk, which is cool.
Yeah.
As I said, the Watcher. There was another few, like Cloak and Dagger. I think were in
Yeah,
there.
Cloak and Dagger were there.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was just like a bunch of people just like cameoed right at the end, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" Like
Probably just
they
for
were
the
just
sake of it, but it was pretty cool. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Black Panther, obviously.
Oh yeah, T'Chaka.
Mm.
Yes. Um.
Omega Red was there.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange doing an operation. That was
Oh
cool.
yes, Doctor
Yeah.
Strange.
Yeah. A
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
cool
yeah, yeah.
stuff. A lot of cool stuff. I was very excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, it was just like this season was a lot to take in. Um Oh, almost like a little overwhelming at some point, but I feel like the more because I'm gonna keep watching it just over and over again because I still feel
Right.
like there's things I miss, like the Watcher thing you
Mhm.
pointed out. And I just feel like the more that I watch it, the more I'll just like love it. So
Yeah. It's
it's
so
not
good.
that yeah, it was very, very, very good.
Do you have a
Enjoyed it a
season
lot.
ranking or no?
Oh, like episodes? Like
No,
what
no,
was my
no, no.
favorite?
Uh, like 5 seasons plus 97.
Oh, well, obviously this one was my favorite.
Yeah, this is the best.
I really liked season 4. I think I
Hmm.
might go season 4 and then, like, season 1. I think those are probably, like, my top 3.
Yeah, I'm probably like this one, then like 1 and 2. Like the first 2 seasons are so good for me,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's hard to rank. 5 is at the bottom. It'd probably go like this, then
Well,
like
yeah.
2, 1, 4, 3, 5. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's probably
something
how I
like
go.
that.
But yeah, you're really great. Did you have a favorite episode? I mean, it's obvious which mine was, but
Um,
remember it's my favorite. Episode 5. Or did you
let
have a
me remind
ranking?
myself. Oh,
Did you?
no, I didn't have a ranking, but I'm just trying to, like, remind myself what happened in every episode.
Well, Mojo's your favorite, so
Honestly, probably episode 5 is probably
yeah,
my
it's
favorite.
it's the best. Cool. Yeah, that's as much as I have right now in my tank to talk about X-Men 97. It's
Yeah.
exhausting because I just watched it all and then, you know, process it all and now talking about it all, but really great. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, I just gone too. That's
Mm,
probably my fault.
triggered it. But thank you guys for
Um,
watching. Let us know what you thought of X Men '97. I know we're like really late to the game. We're probably the only people on Earth, or more Marvel fans on Earth, who didn't watch it yet.
yeah.
Until now, but it was nice to actually watch. I think watching the whole series really helped. Like watching the original series really, really helped. I think we would have been lost had we just jumped in, without Lightfoot
Yeah.
West. So thank you guys for watching. Let us know what you thought. Kelsey, any final thoughts? Wrap up. Where can they find you? All that jazz.
You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can find me on TikTok at Kelsey A. Kilp, or you can follow me on Letterboxd also at Kelsey A. Kilp.
Yep. Find me at Dylan_Randazzo Twitter, Letterboxd, Dylan Randazzo 417 to TikTok, and Dill Pickle Movie Network is where you're watching it here. Listen to us on the podcast feed. We have our own podcast, not Dill Pickle Podcast, but also listen to Dill Pickle Podcast. There's a lot of podcasts. But yeah, thanks so much. Next week we will be doing a commentary as part of the retrospective for Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which is gonna be really fun. To like kick off this retrospective, which is gonna be
Mm,
really really nifty and fun, and we'll get some trivia in there at some point this month. But it's gonna be a really exciting month of June as we look forward to the retrospective. So also go to Letterboxd where I'll be doing retrospective reviews, their written reviews, and then doing some videos on the channel. But otherwise, that's it from Kelsey and Dill. Thank you so much for watching. Go watch X-Men 97 if you haven't. We spoiled it all for you, so if you made it this far, why?
yeah.
But like, watch it, rewatch it. It's so good. Thanks.